project was on a 30-mile test track in Emsland, West Germany, to move passengers faster from place to place. This train actually traveled in one direction. It didn't travel back and forth. It traveled in one direction to avoid head-on collisions, which was pretty awesome through German engineering. But this project was canceled about 10 years ago due to rising costs. So in summary, short-line railroads make local deliveries that the Class 1 railroads won't make or can't make profitably. Class 1 freight railroads deliver freight such as coals, grain, machinery, and consumables within states, between states, cross country, and across two continents like Asia to Europe. In some cases, trains offer faster delivery than shipping by sea and definitely less expensive delivery by air. Due to the large volume that trains are able to move, the environmental effects are greatly reduced. So remember this little riddle. The next time you button your shirt, put on your shoes, turn on your laptop, eat a meal at the dinner table, turn on your lights, start your car, turn on your furnace, or walk into your home or dormitory, you can know, I will repeat that, you can know that a train made it possible. So in conclusion, railroads are important to our domestic and global economies. Job opportunities in the rail industry, as well as supply chain logistics, are growing rapidly today. The railroad industry attracts employees from different backgrounds, especially first responder and military backgrounds. Employees like them help move our raw materials and final products to our destination safely, effectively, and efficiently. They also provide lifetime careers in a few different fields, including industrial development, locomotive engineers, supply chain logistics, conductors, and train dispatchers. With the expansion of our terminals and rail lines, more freight and passengers will be moved by rail faster, safer, and more efficient and effectively in the near future. Thank you all very much. I hope you enjoyed my presentation today. And before I hand the class back over to your professor, I will open the floor for a few questions. Yes, sir?
How'd you get into trains?
It's a funny thing you asked that. That's a really good question. I've been in the trains since I was 3. I've been in the trains for 20 years. I collect some model trains at my house that I run occasionally. And I really got into big trains when I got a little bit older. Loving the sound, loving the horn when it goes through town, the massive lanes that they can pull. And I was into that for a long time. And that led me to started filming trains, photographing trains, as well as my YouTube channel. So that inspiration I had as a kid has really impacted me and helped me expand my hobby. Really good question. Yes, sir, Mr. Bazingo.
So in some of this, in like all your videos, you hear the horns. Is there a specific like routine, like criteria that they have to use when they're coming through a town, or is it just at the conductor's discretion?
That's a really good question. There is a sequence for railroad crossings, as you probably learned in driver's ed. It's 2 longs, a short, and a long. That is the horn sequence. Now, if the guy wanted to wave at somebody, they sometimes will just spam, which means they'll just tap it. But for a railroad crossing, it's 2 longs, a short, and a long. That goes for all railroad crossings. Ones that have the gates and lights and bells, whether even if it's just a protected crossing without a gate, just lights and bells, or even a country crossing as well. They're just protected by a crosswalk. So, I will be glad to take a few more questions before I hand the class back over to your professor.
Why did you go to work with something involving trains? Or did you try?
That's another good question. I decided not to go to railroad. I kind of wanted to use my major in school. And sales inspired me to do that. And I just thought I can use my business concepts like I have learned here through your professor and many teachers that I've had here. I said I think it would be just better if I use my major and see what I can do. And the business major that I have has really helped me in my field of talking to customers, listening to what problems they have, and recommending the right chemical, whether it's a lubricant or a grease or a degreaser, to a certain customer, and trying to help them out. As I have learned, it is a friend helping another friend solve a problem. I'll be glad to take a few more questions. Yes, Josh?
When getting a locomotive going and keeping it going, what is more important? Is it more of something to do with torque, or is it actual horsepower that keeps a rail moving fast?
That's another good question. In one of the slides, I talked about horsepower briefly. The horsepower is key when they pull a lot of big freight trains. Like you just saw in the UPS train, you had one up front and one in the middle. That's 4,400, that's 8,800 horsepower that's pulling that train. And sometimes you're seeing 3 or 4 engines all powered up, and that's double 2 locomotives. Now there are some times where they're just moving power when locomotives are not running. Sometimes somewhere will say, hey, I need 3 locomotives on this yard, or hey, I need 4 locomotives in another yard. So one train, wherever direction it's going, they'll couple those engines on by request of another yard. They'll slap it on that train, they'll set those engines off, and the train will continue going. So that's a really good question. And that's actually a question a friend of mine asked me, who happens to be a friend of my dad's. I'll be glad to take some more questions. Yes, sir, Reese?
How long do the locomotives last? Like, I assume like they, continue to like either rebuild them or add more to them, but like, what's the shelf life?
I will tell you, the average life of a General Electric locomotive is about 25 years. EMD locomotives, they'll last you forever. A lot of those locomotives have been rebuilt, and I'm glad you mentioned that. A lot of the railroads, instead of buying new locomotives, they're rebuilding what they have. Norfolk Southern has probably the best rebuild program up in Pennsylvania. They'll take an old locomotive in the shop, strip the whole thing down, completely redesign it with all new electronics and everything. They'll throw it in the paint booth, give it a nice fresh coat of paint, and it's right out of the shop and back into service. Norfolk Southern has rebuilt countless locomotives, and I've been very fortunate to see a lot of them. I'll point one out that I have here on the slide. This one here, this locomotive happened to be built in the 1980s. And they had some problems with the locomotive not running well with sort of some of the crews. And Norfolk Southern's like, we can rebuild that locomotive. Why waste good money? So they stripped this locomotive down, put a new cab on it, put new electronics in it, fresh coat of paint, and it was right out of the paint shop. So I applaud Norfolk Southern for that. I really do. And the crew said these rebuilt locomotives are really, really nice to ride in. So I'll be glad to take some more questions as well. Yes, sir, Nate?
How many people are in a crew?
Say again?
How many people are in a crew?
Okay. I did not explain this, and I appreciate you bringing this up. You generally have 2 people on crew. You have an engineer and a conductor. The conductor's responsibility is to manage the paperwork, meaning the orders that they have, and perform all moves. The engineer is just the one driving the train. Now, sometimes you'll see 3 men on the crew. Sometimes you'll have an engineer and 2 brakemen. You'll have one in the locomotive sometimes, and you'll have another one on the back, especially if it's a long train. Yes, sir, Mr. Zingo.
So with the uncovered hoppers,
Yeah, the open tops, okay.
when they haul coal, like if they're going to be traveling like across the country, they're probably going to hit some weather. So can they get wet? Can the coal get wet?
Yeah, coal, I'm glad you mentioned this. When coal is dumped, especially Kinder Morgan bulk terminals in Newport News, they will spray the coal down with water to keep the dust down. Now, sometimes the train is traveling through weather like it is today. A little bit of water will actually help keep that dust down.
Oh, wow.
It's like demolishing a concrete building. They sometimes will spray it down with water just to keep the dust down.
Yeah, if you go over, I think it's Monitor Merrimack.
Kinder Morgan bulk
You can
terminals.
see the big equipment spraying water all over the whole, all the mounds of coal they have out there.
I'll be glad to take some more questions, guys. The floor remains open.
He's trying to get out of going to work, people.
No, I'm not. Yes, ma'am.
How did you start learning and memorizing all of this stuff? Because I feel like it's, to me, like an extensive amount of information that I would never be able to remember.
I'm glad you asked that question. Some rail fans have asked me, how do you know all this stuff, Pat? Well, I said, well, it came from me reading out of a lot of books, talking to a lot of people who've been around the rails a long time. And the learn all the locomotive models, I learned it from watching YouTube videos. And I learned how people talk about it, about what it does. I got a friend of mine that works for CSX who is a history book. Let's see, Barry just turned 61. And plus, I can call him anytime if I'm stuck on something. He'll give me the answer just like out of a book. That's why I call him a history book in his own mind. And he's sharp too. He lives about 15 minutes from me. We hang out every week. So, any other questions?
I have a question.
Sure, Professor.
So I can get the radio transmissions, obviously through VHF for ships, and I can get it for planes. How do you access it for rail?
I have actually looked them up on the internet some, because I've actually printed some stuff where I can program the radio frequencies in. And that's where I actually get them. And plus, sometimes I'll just get them from rail fans. But you just can't transmit, because that is a federal offense.
Right, well, you can't do it there either.
Yeah. But it's cool to listen to that because you get to hear what the trains are doing, and you also hear the dispatcher directing the certain moves. Because the dispatcher is like a traffic light at an intersection. He helps direct, especially when it's a switch, and give them the proper signal indication to proceed or when to stop. So the radio for me comes in handy.
I know that there is a scanner app that I use for air, and it does have a Norfolk Southern frequency.
Yes,
Yeah.
I have actually used it on my phone as well sometimes when I don't carry my handheld. I can just listen to that in the car while I drive. I did that for a long time, and then when I got frequencies for the southern portion of Norfolk Southern, I started taking my handhelds down there. And when I get close, I'll just turn it on and just listen to it. So it really does come in handy for me.
How do you get to know all these crews that go by?
Just being out by the rails, man. Just being out by the rails. You know, I have met a lot of nice people with the railroad. I'm glad that this young man has mentioned it. I have met a lot of nice people from the railroad. And I just think they're just humans that are out there just working hard to earn a living. That's all they are. And I've met people, and they're just quite nice people. They just treat you like a normal human being who's out there as a photographer or just somebody who's just up there. And I have counted my blessings every day of all the friends that I've met, not only through Norfolk Southern, I also know a few from CSX. But Norfolk Southern is where a lot of my friends are. And they're just genuinely nice people. And one of them I actually met through my internship in 2018 in North Carolina at the Transportation Museum. We had just finished my first week, and we had just finished the camp. And everybody went to a hot dog shop to have a celebratory lunch before the last event. Train crew comes in, because we run our train around our museum. Someone said, "Hey, Sutter." I said, "Hey, what's up, man?" He said, "I got somebody for you to meet." I said, "Who you got?" He said, "I got a young man who works for Norfolk Southern, and he's a couple years younger than you." I said, "Bring him over here." And he said, "Hello, Pat." He introduced himself. I said, "Glad to know you, son." And we were sitting there having about a good 30-minute conversation. He works in Charlotte for Norfolk Southern, and we talk just about every day. And he and I have become close friends now for almost 2 years. Yes, ma'am?
Has there ever been like one train that you're just dying to go see and you haven't yet, or only seen it like one time?
That is a question with lots of different answers. It's a good question, don't misunderstand it, but I was very fortunate to get the circus train on its last run to Norfolk, which was on my to-do list for a very long time. And they stopped doing that in 2017, I believe was the last year. And there have been lots of other trains that I have seen. I've seen countless trains, ranging from freight to passenger, and I've even been to museums to look at some of their rail equipment. And there are some places that have a working railroad, like where I did my internship as a working railroad. And there's plenty of others, like the Chattanooga Museum, the Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum has one, and the Georgia State Railroad Museum, where your professor went over the holidays, also has one. Just to name a few to get you all an idea. But if you have the chance to go to a railroad museum, I strongly encourage it. You will see history from the past, and you're going to be seeing lots of cool artifacts. I've been to countless museums in my 20 years of loving trains. Yes?
Would you mind sharing your PowerPoint?
Your professor has that, and we'll be sharing that with you.
Yeah, I'll give it to you.
What questions are you going to put on the test?
I don't know.
You don't need to answer that one now.
I know, as I said, I don't know. I'll have to give that some real careful thought.
That's not what I want to hear.
But,
There'll be stuff covered in the slides.
oh, I know that. I know that. See, I know your professor all too well, guys. I really do. But this is one of my very favorite classes here within the major, taught by one of my favorite professors, and he and I have gotten to know each other for 5 years now. And he's helped me get to this point. I want to thank him for helping me get here to this point of my first job and for asking me to come back and do the class. It's one of my very favorite topics and one of my very favorite classes.
We appreciate you coming.
Thank you very much.
With that, we'll take a 10-minute break while Pat gets wrapped up and heads off to work.
Please grab one of my personalized business cards so you guys can contact me anytime if you have training questions. My pleasure. My pleasure. It's a pleasure. Thank you, brother. Yes, sir. Thank you. Take it. Thank you very much. Thanks, Tim. My pleasure. Nice to meet you too. Thank you, Josh. Yes, sir. My pleasure. I appreciate it.
And thank you as always.
Yes, sir. Awesome. It is a distinct pleasure.
Well, where's she at?
Yes, sir. Please don't follow me. Yes, sir.
Awesome. And like I said, I was here. And I will print out this slide, so they'll have those as well.
That's perfect.
Because,
Oh, yeah, I understand. Yeah, that's what.
Close my door.
Tonight you're watching your.
It's just a short video.
It's just so big. I'm so sorry for your loss. I'll let you know. He's gonna kick you out. He's like never. Yeah. You didn't make it. He'd be like, oh. I don't know.